I was out for lunch with a friend of mine last week, Sean, not his real name, but I just want to, I didn't ask him for permission, so I'm just going to use that. And he's in the world of oil and gas. And so the two of us were talking about kind of first, like what he does, right? And I was fascinated with the type of returns that you can really get in an oil and gas deal. And so without going into too much detail, he was describing a couple of projects where you would usually get your money out, all your money back out in between 6 and 12 months, right? And I thought that was unbelievable, especially given the fact that it's all equity, right? They don't usually finance this with debt. And so then he asked me kind of what I'm up to. I shared with him a couple of the real estate projects that I'm working on, some of the developments, and then some value add. And towards the end, he said, hey, like, how can I invest in your deals? And I thought it was kind of interesting, right? Like, so here I am kind of very interested in what he's doing. And then he's saying, hey, Shane, how can I be part of your deals? And so it wasn't until kind of the second part of our meeting that where we actually started to ask about what are the risks, right? So, okay, so you told me all the kind of cool things you're doing. Like, tell me about some of the things that could go wrong. And what was interesting is in a very short amount of time, I could tell that because Sean has so much experience in this world of oil and gas, that he laid out in probably like 2 minutes enough obstacles and challenges and risks that I didn't even know were like I didn't know what I didn't know, right? And so just having that kind of awareness made me realize why back in 2013, I think it was, that I invested in a junior oil and gas. They happened to be sharing space with me and my other business partner, and we liked the guys. They were nice. They seemed to know what they were doing. We put some money in, and sure enough, goes to zero, right? Now, a person could say, well, oil went from 100 and whatever, $100 a barrel, $120 a barrel, all the way down to 30, and that's why you lost money. And while that certainly is true, what I didn't realize was, and in speaking to other people in this market, that you could actually hedge out, meaning you could lock in prices for your oil for contracts for the next 1, 2, 3 years. I don't know how long out you can do this, and like I said, this is obviously outside of my scope, but it's these it's like what you don't know, and what you're not even aware of that can really hurt you. And then when you do start to understand those risks, not being able to evaluate properly what is the probability of something like that going wrong, those are, I guess, reasons why even after our meeting, I would probably still invest with Sean because I trust him and he has such a strong track record. The reality is that they fill up their deals like in a day, right? They're raising millions of dollars in a very short amount of time. And it's because they have an incredible track record and the team that's assembled around it is so strong, right? And so, like, now I'm going to just kind of compare this, if you will, to commercial real estate. And then we're going to get back to this concept of judgment and how it all kind of ties together. And so, in commercial real estate, one of the things that I think gives me an advantage is because I've been at this for 15 years, maybe more. I don't really, I don't track it exactly. I started in like 2006, 2007. And so having that length of time in the market, being around some very smart people, mentors, and people that I've invested with or have invested in me, I understand the risks. I understand the variables that are either inside or outside of my control. And so what it does is it gives me the ability to kind of properly evaluate, like, what are the percentage chances that this deal will go good or will go bad. And I mean, I just posted this on Facebook, but over the weekend I did, or maybe it was on Friday, I went and looked at a value add opportunity. And within about 5 minutes, I quickly evaluated that it did not make sense. And if you want, you can kind of read the whole thing on my Facebook page, but I'll give you the essence of it. The first thing that I didn't like about the deal was the fact that it was already on the market, which means that I'm not seeing it first. I'm like, just like the other 100 investors out there, all looking at the same thing, right? And secondly, it was listed intentionally low, which means that it's going to attract a lot of attention. And now I'm competing with probably 10, 20, 30 other investors. And so immediately I have no competitive advantage, right? So the only thing that I can really do is like know the numbers better than someone else and understand the demand for that product better than someone else, which I didn't feel that I had that competitive advantage. And so I quickly just said, you know what? The deal is too skinny. I don't see how I can, I'm not the best buyer for this, right? Now, if this was an off-market deal and I wasn't competing, it would be a very different story. But that wasn't the case, right? And so I'm going to give you this concept of judgment as defined by Naval Ravikant. So he describes it first as wisdom is knowing long-term consequence of actions. Okay, so that's the first part of it. The second part is judgment is wisdom applied to external problems. And so in this case, I'm going to talk about external problems as investing, right? Because generally speaking, we have money, we want to invest it. And the problem is, where do we invest it? What is the best, safest place to put our capital, if you will, right? And so I'm going to use Warren Buffett because obviously most people know who Buffett is. And what's interesting is he's been investing for probably 70 plus years. I don't know exactly. And if you look at it, his reputation based on his judgment to make sound investing decisions is what really kind of sets him apart. And there are other investors that have generated higher returns, but I don't think anybody has invested as long as Warren and Charlie Munger, his business partner, with that real like longevity and durability, if you will. And so that's why he has this almost flywheel effect, right? He's got the judgment, the credibility, the track record. He sees deal flow. He's able to raise more money, and it's this kind of cyclical ability for him to continue to grow without having to put a tremendous amount of effort. I know he does work hard. He reads a lot, but I'm just he does. I think he could probably still achieve the same type of results without having to assemble so much information, if you will, right? So that's the first part. Now, tying this into some of the things in terms of what I'm doing and why I do it, right? So I get a question frequently on why do I share some of my investing philosophies online? Why do I post about it on my podcast or on Instagram? And I guess for a little bit of clarity, I don't actually go into the specific deals that I'm doing because I certainly want to make sure that I'm not giving away proprietary information, right? It takes a long time to find these deals. So I usually won't talk about it until afterwards. But I do like to talk about my thesis, my philosophy on why I'm investing in certain things. And there's a good reason for that. And there's a couple of reasons. One, I like to get feedback from people, right? People, especially that are in the world that are maybe a little bit peripheral in terms of they're not directly people that I'm talking to on a frequent basis. So it's nice to be able to have those conversations. Like behind the scenes, usually when I'm doing a podcast, I'll spend anywhere from 5 to 10 on the front and back, just having open conversations that we don't actually get shared on the actual podcast, right? Because people don't always want to share their perspectives, like the real perspectives, if you will. Secondly, I've got a few mastermind people where once a month I get together and we just talk about what it is that we're doing in our business, and those were direct results from having the podcast. And then last, and this is something that is kind of outside the scope of the podcast, if you will, but being able to share this, generally speaking, it's like me having a conversation with several hundred people a week. And what's interesting is there are some of my investors, as well as some people that are just inside my world, that will kind of hear some of the things that I'm doing. And they'll contact me and they'll say, hey, did you think about this? What about this? Have you considered X, Y, Z? And so it's a really interesting way to just multiply and amplify having conversations with people on a very frequent basis and getting that kind of real-time feedback, right? Instead of me having to get on the phone with, 200 or 300 people a week or more, depending on how good the podcast is, I'm able to do that. And if someone has something interesting, they'll typically just ping me, they'll hit me up with something, and they will maybe give me a different perspective on how to think about things. And so there's a lot of benefits, if you will, to taking a bit of a chance. Certainly, I'm not an expert on judgment. I'm not an expert on this topic whatsoever. However, this is a good way for me to kind of internalize it a little bit more, so that the more I talk about it, the more I internalize it, and hopefully it resonates and stays in the back of my mind versus just reading it one time and then forgetting about it. So those are a little bit of the kind of motivations in terms of why I share what I do. And in terms of takeaways, because I always try to give you something kind of tangible that might be interesting. Um, I think the biggest thing that has been most helpful for me is finding people you can trust with good judgment. And while that may sound obvious, it is actually much harder because there are a lot of people I trust, a lot of people I love that I wouldn't necessarily trust their judgment on investing or on relationships or on fitness, right? And usually you can see it just by the results that they have gotten. And so typically I'm going to go to the people that have the results that I'm after, and they acquired those results in a fashion that I would be that is in alignment with my values, right? So I'm not obviously going to, like, there's a lot of people in the world of commercial real estate that I'm aware of that have got there not by means that I would find acceptable, right? So I'm not going to pursue that because, frankly, I'm not going to follow in their footsteps, right? Doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It's just not in alignment with my values. Okay. So if you can really kind of find someone that has the outcome that you're after, they've done it for a long period of time, right? Because the other challenge is it's pretty easy, especially in the world of commercial real estate, because you can make 7, even 8 figures on a single transaction, but that doesn't mean that you are an expert, right? You might have got lucky once or twice, but have you done it for 10, 15, 20, 40, 50 years, like some of the people that are I'm fortunate enough to have in my sphere, if you will. So those are a few things. Secondly, like, how do you actually get that? I would say, first of all, obviously, if there's a relationship there, then it's probably fairly easy just to have a quick phone call. But if you don't have that ability, seeking out those people and then figuring out if you can pay for that. Like, I'll tell you, like, without question, if I was going to invest in oil and gas, I would call my buddy Sean and I would offer to pay him. Now, he may just say, Shane, I don't need your money, but I would definitely say, look, I would actually prefer you to take my money. And there's a few reasons. One, because I don't want this to feel like there's an obligation. Secondly, I want you to take this seriously. I want you to actually look at this deck. I want you to look at this and evaluate it. Like, I just want to, I mean, even if it cost me $5,000, if it saved me $100,000 from making a mistake, like, just thinking about how long it took to make that money and to be able to, like, compact someone's wisdom into an hour, 2, 3, 5 hours, whatever it took to really get that. And it could be just a 15-minute conversation where he says, no, here are the 3 reasons why I would never do it. Or yes, here are the 3 reasons I would do it. That to me is well worth it, right? I may be different, but I've been burned on 1, 2, 3 deals that I can think of. And if I had someone in my corner that was there to give me that judgment, right? And if you go back, judgment is the wisdom of knowing the long-term consequences of those actions applied to external problems. So if you think about that, it's like being able to see into the future, if you will, right? And while no one has a crystal ball, obviously someone that has done it, like Warren Buffett, for 70 years, you're going to take his judgment very seriously, right? I mean, that's why people, I think, pay millions of dollars to just go to lunch with him, just to be able to hopefully glean like 1 or 2 things just from that conversation. So anyways, in terms of how you could potentially even apply this beyond just finding the right people, is developing your own checklist, right? So for me, I've developed a checklist that I use when I'm looking at commercial properties. I think it's right now over 50 variables that I use to track deals. I've got, BOEs, or back of the envelope 2-pagers that I try to, I will fill out when I'm looking, and I can almost do it just by rote now. Like, I can do it without having to look at my spreadsheets. But I think just developing the tools that will support you in kind of, initially like that judgment takes more time to really figure out. But I think if you practice writing, practice sharing it with other people, and just describing your own philosophy to friends in terms of why you think the way you do, and be okay to get a little bit of pushback, right? Like what I thought 5, 10 years ago is different than what I think today. And I'm sure that in the future, I will change my mind on how I'm investing. This is, my decisions that I'm making today is kind of this acquired knowledge that I've um, internalized. But if it continues and I don't change for the next 20 years, likely what that means is I'm not growing and I'm not open to new ideas. So, anyways, a little bit of a ramble. Hopefully, this helps, like I said, even one person just to think about things a little bit differently and really kind of drill down on the judgment that you are and wisdom that you are kind of seeking from other people. Because frankly, I think it's a great way to at least just get different outside perspectives on some of the things that you're doing. Could be fitness, could be business, could be relationships, could be investing. Um, I wasn't even going to talk about this, but what the hell? I'll just do it right now, real quick. So last week I wasn't planning on it, but I actually made a commitment publicly in terms of what I was going to do in terms of a fitness goal, right? And I think I said I was 195 by December 31st. What's crazy is I posted that on Facebook. It was just a little blurb, and I was kind of like, I wasn't going to do it, but it was part of the challenge that I accepted, that I was going to post it publicly. And I want to say within 24 hours, I had probably 20 people commenting on different ideas and thoughts. And one guy in particular, Tim, who's a buddy of mine, he kind of called me out and he said, well, let's do a fast. I've never done a fast. I've never fasted for more than probably 16 hours. This Saturday and into Sunday, I fasted for 24 hours. And I must say it was very difficult, but I'm very happy I did it. And I never would have done it had it not been for A, going public, and B, going, public, being accountable, right? And then having that kind of, I don't know, judgment, wisdom from a friend to kind of push me a little bit. So, anyways, there you go. That's it. I got to roll. I got a meeting coming up. So, have a great week, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.